recruitment for the new OHA director. I see people are still logging in, so we're going to give it a moment to settle, and then we'll get things started. I did want to share today's listening session is for Oregon Health Policy Board members. So we will be asking members to answer questions from the listening session, and those attending the listening session, you're welcome to send me chats, and I can convey those to the Modus recruitment team for either today's discussion, or I can compile those. So did want to share that information, as well as there are a couple community listening sessions that will be available to the public, and we'll be dropping those into the chat shortly. And I see Oscar's joined us. So good morning, Oscar. I see that Kirsten is with us, as well as John Santa. So good morning, members. And we also have our Modus recruiting team with us. And so I think we'll go ahead and get started with some introductions and kick things off. So welcome everyone to the Oregon Health Policy Board's listening session on the OHA director recruitment process. Today's listening session is going to be recorded and posted on the Oregon Health Policy Board's website later today or tomorrow. And I also did want to share that today's listening session is for Oregon Health Policy Board members. So members will be answering the questions that the Modus recruiting team will be presenting. And those in our audience are welcome to submit to me any written comments or send their comments via chat, or there are 3 upcoming community listening sessions. And I'll drop those dates and information into the chat. And without any further updates, I believe I've covered all of them. I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Orlando with the Modus recruiting team.
Thank you so much, Tara. So we'll dive right in, and I'll just calibrate a couple of our items, our agenda for this morning. So the first, of course, your voice is extremely important for us, and the information that you'll be sharing this morning, our team will be compiling to create a rubric that will help inform our recruitment. And it will also be used to help develop interview questions. So it becomes invaluable to gather the information that you share. Much of the information will also reach the governor so that it helps calibrate your voices with her recommendations as we get closer to the end of the process. And so as we go through today, we'll use an open forum. We have 5 questions that we're going to ask you, and those questions are designed to spark conversation. They are not meant to be prescriptive, nor are you required to go in any specific order when you answer or respond to the questions. So we're going to be open to coloring outside the lines if you would like to. So feel free to do that. And really, we hope you're comfortable providing your authentic voice in this discussion. So why don't we start with just a couple of quick introductions, brief introductions, and then we'll start. So I'll start with our team. And Drayshawn, if you wouldn't mind with a quick introduction.
Yes, thank you, Orlando. Good morning, everybody. My name is Drayshawn Vance. I am our Vice President of Executive Search. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you, Drayshawn. And Tasha.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Tasha Wheat Delancey, working with Modus and Operations.
Thank you, Tasha. So it'd be great to go to the OHPB members now, and I see so many familiar faces, so that's great. Oscar, if you wouldn't mind kicking us off.
Sure. Good morning. My name is Oscar Arana. I use he, him pronouns. I work at the Native American Youth and Family Center, and I serve as co-chair of the Oregon Health Policy Board. So I'll hand it over to Kirsten.
Good morning. It's great to see you all again. Kirsten Isaacson. I serve as Vice Chair of the Oregon Health Policy Board, and my day job, I work at the Service Employees International Union Local 49 SEIU. And I'll kick it to John. I see you next.
Yeah, hi you all, and thanks so much for doing this. So I'm John Santa, he, him. I am a retired primary care doctor, and I did a lot of health administration over the years, and really appreciate you all doing this. Thanks.
Thank you, John.
I don't know if we have anybody else on the board, but we should just do a quick check in case there's somebody on the line who's a board member.
I'll keep an eye out too and let you guys know if someone joins late.
So, excellent. Well, this is great. That means that the three of you get to weigh in heavily then on, on this discussion. So we're looking forward to it. So if
Hey, Orlando,
yes,
just real fast.
Hi,
I just
Abby.
thought I would introduce myself as well, just so
Oh.
for awareness. So I'm Abby, and I'm the use she, her pronouns, and I'm the lead staff person for the governor's office on the OHA search. So I'm just here to listen. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Abby. I didn't see you there. Thank you so much.
All good.
All right, so if we could just share the slide briefly, and we'll walk through the questions that we're going to cover this morning. So just quickly, and again, we don't want to be too prescriptive, but these will help guide our rubric development and our questions for the interview. So question one, what do you see as the major challenges in Oregon healthcare or OHA in the next 5 years? Adjacent to that, question number two are the opportunities that you see in the next 5 years. Question number three, what innovations or vision should be given consideration in Oregon healthcare and or the OHA over the next 5 years? Question four regarding leadership is what leadership style or ways of being or knowing do you want to ensure are represented in the next OHA director? And then, of course, we want to make sure that we cover diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we're interested in what type of engagement and experience regarding diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging that the next OHA director should possess. And just to calibrate us on the fifth question, I want to make sure that we are all aligned in that while it may seem a little additive as a question number 5 in a slide deck, it is woven within the fabric of every element of what we're talking about today. So I didn't want it to feel or seem as though it were an add-on. It is definitely a part of all of the fabric and all of the work that we're doing. I've talked to Abby in great detail about that. And of course, all of you, I believe, know that. So I just wanted to make sure that for those of you who may be looking at that slide and considering the order or even the content, that is in fact woven within all of what we're doing today and throughout the process. So without any further ado, we'd love to just open it up for discussion. And I do know it's tough to go first and kick us off. And so you do not have to follow the cadence of the order 1 through 5. If there's something that piques your interest, by all means do that. Or if you have another thought, please do that as well. I will prompt for question number 1 as far as challenges, and you can take it from there. So I'll start with you, Oscar, if you wouldn't mind just kicking us off first and giving us your thoughts.
Sure, thank you. I think in terms of like major challenges, the things that come to mind for me are one, cost of healthcare. It's increasing very quickly. It's very expensive. It's out of reach for a lot of folks. People are having to make decisions about when they get care based on how expensive it is. Another major challenge that comes to mind is access to healthcare, especially access to behavioral health care, culturally appropriate care, right? I think a lot of folks, particularly communities of color, are not seeking care because they're not having providers that are people that look like them or can relate to them, to their experiences. Plus, just like access in general, it's hard. It's a complicated system. I think, yeah, like workforce is another one, right? I think the access is also connected to workforce challenges. So there's just major workforce challenges of like getting people into this field, through this field, particularly, people of color, getting them through the professional ladder to kind of get to particularly some of the higher level positions in healthcare. So I'll start with those three. I'll leave it at that and see what my colleagues have to say.
Wonderful, Oscar. Thank you so much for that insight. Kirsten, if you wouldn't mind sharing next.
Sure. My mind also went directly to price when reading this question. And I think we have a few strategies that the state of Oregon has been working on in terms of how do we address the price of healthcare. I think some of that is the cost growth target. Some of that is move towards value-based payment, the value-based payment compact. But it really feels like we are stalled in that movement, especially towards value-based payment. There's a lot in the more and more in the national news and kind of thinking heads about like, is that an effective route? And it just feels like we're not running towards that very hard right now. And so how are we actually impacting the price? And the reason why price jumps out as so important is like when we heard an update from the Ombuds office, they talked about people on Medicaid seeking behavioral health and not being able to get a bed or a spot, but if they could private pay, they could get that same day. And that is just so wrong and unfair and awful and not the system we're seeking to create. And that to me speaks, there are some like monetary motivations making that happen that are deeply out of balance with the values of our state. And so that was really playing in my mind when I thought about a major challenge of price and all of its ugly impacts. Because I also am very concerned about medical debt. But this prioritized patient bit is just so wrong. And then I also, relative to price, also think about the increased role of private equity or say large companies like Amazon coming in and running major health clinics in Oregon. And not that per se is a problem, but it comes back to price to me. There's some money to be made there, and what does that mean for patients? And I'm very concerned about that. And I think also related, it's like we set up this CCO model, thinking that this model would truly transition the motivation towards health, and that Oregon would have these global payments rewarding the provision of health care, not just individual services. And that phrase, you've seen one CCO, you've seen one CCO. I feel like a challenge right now in our state is truly like, how do we move towards health? What parts of our CCO model are succeeding in doing that? And therefore how do we expand those or support them? And how can we be honest with ourselves and change what is not working? And those were my thoughts.
Kirsten, thank you so much for sharing that. John, your insights.
Well, I think the major challenge is leadership. I think Oregon's transformative changes when it comes to healthcare have come from public leadership. Oregon's governor has the choice to lead healthcare, but they also have the choice not to. And if they choose not to, then this position becomes Oregon's healthcare leader. Now, the governor, of course, has to remember that, as we just learned, sometimes the governor has no choice but to become the healthcare leader, and that's what happened to Kate Brown. She became our healthcare leader. And I think we had solid health leadership through the pandemic. And the results show that. And I think that's true for equity. One of Dave Baden's recent emails presented the equity impact that occurred during the pandemic in terms of vaccination rates for African American and Hispanic population. OHA changed that disparity. But health leadership in the state has gotten politicized, and we've lost momentum because of that. And so I think the challenge is we have to fix that. And that's why it's great to see you all here. It's great to see that you will take the time and make the effort and hopefully fix that.
John, thank you so much for that. And we also, of course, give credit to Abby and her team and the governor for inviting us to take our time to do the work that's necessary to respond to the concerns that are there. And that everyone that lives and works and plays in Oregon wants to see happen. So we appreciate that feedback. So with that said, I don't think we've had any additional board members join in. So we'll just keep moving forward then and move to our next category, which are opportunities within the OHA or the healthcare system here in Oregon. So I'll come back to you, Oscar, to gather your thoughts regarding opportunities that you see.
Yeah, it's so interesting that we just ended on John's comment about leadership, because my answer to opportunities was going to be about leadership, right? I actually think that a major opportunity that we have here is like being able to having the opportunity to select the right leadership to lead OHA and to lead Oregon during this very challenging transition period. So I think it's going to be really important that whoever is selected is someone who's going to be able to withstand so many different complexities and challenges of the agency. So I think that it's going to be a really, it's a tough role, but there's a lot of opportunities that come with it. I think that there's also just a lot of really great things happening with the agency, right? There's incredible innovations that are happening with the waiver implementation. So I think that there's just a lot of really exciting, innovative things happening within Oregon, within the agency. So it's a matter of bringing the right leader to be able to move such a big, big agency, big bureaucracy along, to be able to collaborate with other agencies as well to move these very complex systems so that they can start working much better.
Oscar, thank you for that. And if I can, I'd love to just ask a follow-on question to you regarding leadership. And John, feel free to chime in since we're going to stay on that key element. So we understand that the agency is large. In certain spaces, it might even be considered that there are silos that exist, that there are opportunities to engage community partners in a more robust way. So when you say leadership, and John, when you say leadership, in addition to what you shared, Are those elements also woven into the fabric of what you mean by leadership and how you would define that? Someone who can maybe bring the organization together, find efficiencies across agency departments and also into the community as well?
Say that one more time, Orlando.
Yeah, yeah. So the other element that we see or have heard regarding the agency, and you mentioned the sheer size of the agency, that oftentimes breeds silos where there could be inefficiencies across agency departments. Then there's also the opportunity for leadership to just be in the community, right? Speaking with community-based organizations outside of the CCOs who are also partnering with solving some of these challenges that we're facing in the state of Oregon as well. So just wanted to capture if that's also woven into your thoughts around leadership when you use that to describe the next director.
Yeah, for me, definitely yes. And it might be that there might need a different leadership structure as well. It might be too much for one person to be able to do all these different things, right? Be on the ground and be like working at the Capitol, right? And be managing the agency as well. So it may be that it's a lot for one position. So there may even be, again, and I think we do need that leader who can sort of say who can come to that and sort of advocate to potentially create a different form of structure that does allow for some of de-siloing to occur and being more embedded within the community as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Oscar. Thank you for weighing in on that. And Kirsten, I didn't mean to leave you out of that leadership force. So by all means, when we come back to you, if you want to weigh in on that, but I see John unmuted, so I'm going to give you another bite at the apple, John, if you were going to weigh in on that leadership follow on.
Yeah, well, like Oscar, actually, I see leadership as the major opportunity to focus on. It's both, for me, the major challenge, but that means it's a major opportunity. I was on the board when Pat Allen came on, and the agency had difficulties. And I think Pat turned many of those around. When I think about the job, I think it's 3 jobs. One, you have to manage a budget in 5,000 people. So that's a real internal management challenge. 2, you have to manage the governor and the legislature. I know when Pat came on, OHA was struggling in terms of the legislature's perception of OHA leadership. And I know that Pat turned that around. My sense is some of those difficulties came up again as a variety of issues in COVID were politicized, et cetera. The third thing that I think makes it really difficult is the director needs to manage the private side. He or she need to manage folks who have a set of incentives that are all about inequity. Competition is all about, scrambling in whatever way you can. And that oftentimes means pushing the other guy down. You just got to get to the front. And the measurement is money. And my own philosophy is that's never going to work. And it's time we face up to that. It's not going to work. And expecting a director to solve that long term is unrealistic. It's not surprising that the private side becomes critical of the OHA director. Billions of dollars are at stake. So finding a person who can do all 3 of those things, I think, is pretty impossible. My sense is Pat Allen chose some very capable people to take care of the financial and operational issues. Were there problems? Yeah, managing 5,000 people is hard. I think he managed the governor and the legislature during some very difficult times in some pretty reasonable ways until he didn't. In terms of the private side, sometimes I think it was brilliant to have a goal of equity by 2030, because that is a goal that is totally different than the usual private side goal. Doesn't have anything to do with making money, really. In fact, it's kind of difficult to create equity and be focused on profits. I would hope that the leader would be able to be good at the third, because I believe that's the hardest. Have the support of the governor and legislative leadership to take care of the second, and have a staff that focused on the first, with of course leadership at the right time in terms of the director. But that's where I'd be.
Excellent, John. Thank you so much for that insight and feedback. Kirsten, we'll come to you now. Your thoughts on opportunities.
Yeah, I'm happy to share my thoughts on opportunity. I also, like, after these comments, my mind can't help go to some of the later questions about what are the traits of this leader that would go for that, but stick to the plan. I think one of the opportunities in Oregon is that I think there are a lot of partners that would, our stakeholders in our state are not only interested parties, but they can be very willing partners, and that we do, even though many come at this with different motivations and we don't always agree, I do think that there is a unique ground of collaboration in Oregon that I would hope this next director will take advantage of. And I think that includes a willingness to try new things in our state, and not just among this board and community partners, but also among the legislature and the governor. So, like, the basic health plan came about pretty quickly as it's been percolating. It's not like nobody had ever heard of it, but like it actually transitioned into something real quite quickly. And I think that provides opportunity for a leader with a vision and drive to be like, we need something new. Here is the idea. Let's do this. Come on, everyone. And so anyway, that's an opportunity. I also think this particular moment, there's a lot of opportunity / challenge around workforce development and retention. But I lean towards that in the opportunity zone, because I think the state has put incredible funds. The legislature has already put incredible funds in that area. And so I think there's some space to capitalize on that moment. And if we don't, then we've fallen behind for sure. But think of it as an opportunity.
Awesome. So Kirsten, I'm gonna mix it up and stay with you here. regarding our next question around innovations that should be given consideration. So I'll stay with you, and we'll just keep. We'll change the order here.
Oh gosh, this was the one question where I was like, I don't know.
Okay. Well, you can pass if you like. You can defer if you'd like.
But I will go out on a branch.
Okay.
I heard John a lot in my mind last night as I was thinking about this. I'll just say that our system, the past few months have had, many months have had many challenges in our healthcare system, and I can't help but hope that the next director really thinks long and hard about alternative funding mechanisms for our healthcare, so that we don't just play around the edges. We have a lot of mitigation strategies in our state, more than other states. So I'm proud of those. But I also hope that the next OHA director is able to really think about fundamental change to our structure of our healthcare system, and how do we pursue that in partnership with the governor's office, the legislature, and all the other interests, so that we can actually change the fundamental way healthcare works in our state. And that is hard to do, very hard to do. But to me, that means that the consideration around single payer and other pretty dramatic ideas need to be seriously contemplated.
Excellent, Kirsten. Thank you. Oscar, your thoughts on innovation or visioning?
Sure, and I think John and I are very much in sync today, because I heard him say something which I was going to be my answer to question 3. But in terms of vision, again, this eliminating health disparities by 2030, right? I think that is a vision that we should still not lose, right? I also think it's a vision that needs a little bit more clarity around what are the steps, what is the plan to get us there, right? And we're basically about 6 years away before 2030. So while it might have been really nice to say that 10 years ago, and oh, we feel like we have a ways to go, we're almost we're almost at the halfway point. And I think that there's got to be something that we can show, progress, right? At the half year mark, we got to be able to say this is what we've achieved, and sort of get people re-energized around this vision, get them excited to kind of continue moving down this path. In terms of innovations, it's really simple, but I actually think it's very innovative, and I think it's its simplicity that is innovative. Again, it's the health equity definition that was created by the Health Equity Committee and then adopted by the policy board to sort of create that shared agency definition about what does it mean to move towards health equity. And it's a long definition, but there's this really significant point from this definition, that it's really about the redistribution of resources and power to those communities that need it the most. And this definition was adopted not too long before the pandemic occurred. And I really think that it was this definition and the grounding of this definition that kind of, in a way, really shaped the agency's response to the pandemic, right? And it was this definition that allowed the agency and gave the agency the support to be able to redistribute all these federal resources down to communities that would have probably not had access to these federal resources. And they were able to use these funds to respond to the pandemic in ways that were different, and in ways that were innovative, in ways that were not mainstream or traditional, in ways that were just that they were able to come up with based on what they were hearing from their, community members and clients. So I really think that that definition is really innovative, and it's really important to continue to hold that.
Excellent, Oscar. Thank you very much. John, your thoughts on innovation. Sounds like we've got some synergy.
Yeah, we do. I mean, my suggestion around innovations and vision would basically be to try to stop the drowning that we're experiencing because of the administrative obstacles that create opportunities for profit, but cause incredible inequity, waste and corruption. I think we have a corrupt healthcare system. The examples are all over the place. It amazes me to listen every day and here's the stories about the corruption and that's going on in healthcare, and yet it seems to be ignored. I think it's time to consider all options, and that includes a single payer that would get rid of most, if not all, of those administrative obstacles. In my mind, OHA's objective to achieve health equity by 2030 is a strong start, as I can't figure out how we will get to health equity in 2030 unless we get rid of a lot, if not almost all of those administrative obstacles. So I think all options to achieve health equity should be on the table. There is another process underway that made it through the legislature to take the next step in seriously considering a single payer. And the governor will have input into that through the appointment process. It'll occur primarily in DCBS, but OHA will also have input. So, the table is set for that discussion to occur, and I would just hope that the OHA director would help to lead that.
Well, John, thank you so much for that insight, and that synergy is fantastic to hear. So as we move into our next category, we'd like to maybe give you an opportunity to revisit the leadership question, and I know we spent some time on that, so feel free to double click if you'd like, or we can move directly into our diversity, equity, and inclusion question in regard to this next leader. And I would love to be additive to this question and have you contemplate the lived experience, learned experience question around the next director, if you feel comfortable. And then I'd also like to ask you if you have thoughts about sector or space that this individual might come from. So much of the information that you're sharing will of course make it to the governor, and she'll have an opportunity to hear and understand what you're sharing. But as recruiters, we love to get any type of particular leanings or insights regarding where this person might currently reside and where you think it might be able to bring value to the OHA in its future. So I'll stop there, and we'll go back to that same cadence. And Kirsten, if you wouldn't mind leading off in that last category, leadership or diversity, equity, inclusion, or both, if you'd like.
Yeah, I want to talk about leadership for a moment, but I appreciate moving to the diversity, equity, inclusion question because I definitely think we should see the clock and want to spend time on that one. I don't have specific thoughts about what sector this person should come from. I do think that this is a unique position, as my fellow board members already outlined, that requires both the skills to run an enormous agency And so that is no small feat in and of itself if it was just that. But in addition to that, I think this person actually needs to have like pretty capacity for kind of bold partnership, I would call it, with the governor, with the legislature, with the community, and with private sector actors in healthcare too, who aren't, anyway, who are essential actually to achieving our goals here as well. And so I think that requires someone who is able to trust, to build a network and trust, because they cannot do all these things, as I think it was Oscar that pointed out. And so they have to be able to build and work within a team to make things true. And I think that should include both like people who are already doing this work and have been doing this work that might be new to this person. So are they able to build a team both with people they already have established relationships with and people they don't yet? Because I think that will be important. And it's perhaps we're describing a unicorn here, but I also think of someone like it's like you want someone who's both a brilliant strategist and a very effective bureaucrat. And so thank you for doing this search, and I've heard wonderful things about Modus, so I'm very hopeful. So moving on to question 5. Also thinking about our definition, which the board adopted and feels very passionately about. I think reflecting on that definition is important, because when we think about diversity, equity, and inclusion, especially as it relates to OHA and healthcare, this is not, it is very vast, right? Like we believe that healthcare doesn't start in the clinic. It's much larger than that. So I would like a director that although they will be the director of the Oregon Health Authority, recognizes that the path to health for all people in Oregon includes, they of course are not responsible for what happens in our schools, but when we talk about partnership, it is about what is happening in our climate, in our schools, and our availability of vegetables. It is so broad, and it includes how you are treated under the law or by our fellow human beings. And so it's very expansive, and I would like a leader that is committed to that definition, committed to the goal, and has an expansive view of what it means to achieve health equity. And I think first priority would be some experience with that, right? And so, and the ability to listen. So like I can imagine what it's like to be, or I have experienced what it's like to be living in a rural area with no resources, and my definition of what was rich growing up, I like when I saw something else, I was like, oh my gosh, wow, my anyway, I had to recalibrate for sure. And so like I recognize what I come and do not come to the table with in terms of my own lived experience, and I think that is important for someone to do. So we each bring our lived experience to the table, and recognizing where we need to listen and trust others is critical. So draw what you can, and then trust and listen to others.
Excellent, Kirsten. Thank you so much. Excellent feedback and insights. Oscar, Your possible synthesis of questions 4 and 5, or just question 5, and maybe speak to the sector or space where you might think a person, if you have a thought on where a person might come from, that would be great as well.
Sure. Let's see. I mean, I do want to, I'll combine both of them. I think we really need somebody who's collaborative, right? Somebody who is relatable, somebody who wants to partner with folks. Obviously, partnership is going to be really important. So many stakeholders, so many bureaus, including the federal government. Let's see, somebody who is committed and dedicated, because I think that also goes a long way, right? Something that this is not just a job for them. These are not just jobs. These become much more than that. These become part of are integrated into your life. They're woven into your life. So somebody who is well aware of that and is happy to have that be part of their lives. I think like in terms of like sectors that are going to be really important, I think they need to have some political experience, right? Because this is a very political and politicized agency. So they need to be able to have some understanding of the politics involved and how to, get some wins from the legislature as well, get some funding so they can, move projects forward and move the work forward. So political experience is important. Obviously, like experience and health is important. I think, for me, in terms of health, we kind of like what Kirsten was saying, like the social determinants of health, right? Like we know that like if you don't have access to housing, that's going to severely impact your health outcomes, right? It's actually the number one, like housing is like the number one determinant of like health. So, or at least like the number one priority when it comes to health. So somebody who can really take some of the wins that we've gotten with this new waiver that kind of start building bridges around housing and take it to the next level, right? Like somebody who can sort of really see that it's not just about like sort of like the traditional healthcare, but it's also thinking about like upstream like systems, upstream policies, upstream ways of thinking that can kind of impact health. I think we live in a society that is about like the now, what is happening right now. So it's very easy to focus on like the day to day. So, but we don't really think in the future. All the day to day constraints force us to like just live in the moment, work in the moment, and don't give us that opportunity to sort of like take that step back and look into the future and think about like, what can we do now to have like a better outcomes in the next 5 to 10 years, even if they won't get to claim those outcomes, right? So we actually really need somebody who can think, can look towards the future. It'd be really nice to have somebody with lived experience or cross-cultural experience, right? Within communities of color, within tribal communities. Working with the tribes would be really important. They're a major stakeholder in the state. So those are some of my thoughts.
Excellent, Oscar. Thank you so much for sharing. John, the floor is yours. Your thoughts.
Yeah, I'll also blend them. In terms of style and ways of being, this person needs to be a terrific communicator. But to me, that means they need to be really good at listening. There's some disciplines that require that teach you that. And I would really, look for experience in disciplines that require good listening. The director should have no conflicts of interest, and in my mind have an absolute aversion to the appearance of conflict of interest. And that's actually really hard in healthcare. Really, really hard. Finally, in terms of style, I think this needs to be a person who wants the job because of the equity goal. That's why they want the job. And they are eager to take that on. They don't want the job to say they managed $12 billion and 5,000 people. Though they clearly have to be willing to take that on and capable of it. But they want the job because of the equity goal. In terms of 5, I think you're going to have a difficult time finding a person with the type of engagement experiences at this scale, at the 5,000 employee, $12 billion budget scale. But I think there's people who have done this and done it well at a lower scale who could step up and do this. And those are the folks I would be trying to find. And how to look for them. This is awkward, but I think I would guess that Pat Allen's resume that he sent to New Mexico listed everything he had accomplished in terms of equity. You bet it did. And it would be impressive. And, and it included that data around the success at reducing disparities during the COVID epidemic. That was just, I think, an incredible result. And so I think it's fair to ask that we look for a person who has a similar list of accomplishments, maybe at a smaller scale. But they're mid-career, they've got the energy, they've got the desire, the drive to do it. And I hope you find them. I'm counting on you to find that person.
John, thank you so much. I heard the term unicorn mentioned, and we've been unicorn hunters for quite some time now. So we appreciate that. And I also appreciate, John, and I know we just have a few moments left, and I just want to also just offer in a moment of transparency and candor that we recently completed the recruitment for the Chief Executive Officer for the Washington Health Benefit Exchange. And they went through many of the similar challenges that we're hearing regarding price, equity, extending care to undocumented. So there were innovations, there were challenges, there were opportunities, and then what would the exchange look like in the future? And I did, the great thing, John, to your point, and here's my moment of candor, I did have an opportunity to talk to Pat in great detail about his work here in Oregon. And so there were quite a few learnings to just help calibrate us in this region and what the future looks like. So I appreciate you mentioning that. I just wanted to share that there are some synergy there in what you're stating and what we've learned and what we've seen throughout our region and what is possible. So we're excited. It is a difficult search. We're excited about it. And we're excited about bringing the person who matches as many of these qualities as we possibly can. So in the final moments that we have, I think we have about 5 minutes left. I do want to offer, if there's anything that we did not cover, I again realize that we had 5 specific questions, but are there things that we didn't talk about that you want to share with us? This won't have to be our last time engaging, but of course, want to open the floor up one last time. There's things we didn't cover.
Orlando, could you give a little bit, and I saw that John came off mute, so I'll let him we should go to his question right after my comment, but I was wondering if you could do a quick, sort of next steps, like in the process. Yeah.
Absolutely will do, Oscar. John, were you going to weigh in on the other question first?
Well, I just wanted to say thanks for doing this. And this gave me an opportunity to say everything I wanted to say. I hope my other colleagues on the board do the same. There's just 3 of us here this morning, and we have some great colleagues on the board who I hope will input otherwise.
Excellent. Thank you, John. And we are, I think it's also in the chat, but we are accepting and welcoming, I should say, any written comments, additional thoughts. I mean, we remain open as a team. Again, building the rubric and informing our communication to candidates is incredibly important. We do value an incredibly positive candidate experience. So we work toward that with every engagement, every encounter, and every touch point. So the more information we gather, the more it helps us do that and helps us be inclusive and equitable in our process. So we appreciate those written comments. Regarding next steps, Oscar, so we are conducting a series of listening sessions. We have several more to complete. And the recruitment is a rolling recruitment, which means that there are certain mileposts that we will be reviewing talent as it comes in. So we expect that over the next 4 months, 5 months, that we will be looking at talent as it comes in. We will also be assembling a panel, an interview panel of individuals who will participate in evaluating candidates. And we're expecting that we'll have a multiple round process. We're still doing some definitions of what the final round will look like, but ultimately, as we design the final stages of the process, we do know that round 1 will be a cohort model of individuals who are key stakeholders from around the state who are invested in healthcare, OHA and otherwise, and partners and stakeholders. Second round will be a deeper dive, and it will still be a cohort, and individuals from likely the governor's office will participate in that round. And then we're working iteratively for round 3 and what that will look like. There are several models that could be used. That could be a community-based model where we have listening sessions and meet and greets, or there could be just another step in the process. We've had the pleasure of working with Governor Kotek and seeing just with all of the things that are happening in the legislature being elastic, I would say, is probably one of the most important words that I could use to describe this process. But next steps more immediately are additional listening sessions and building the additional commentary for the rubric. Hopefully that helps, Oscar, and answers your question.
It does. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Excellent. Well, I think that brings us to our final moment, and I've heard the thanks to us, but I just want to thank you all for just the incredible insight. That helps us tremendously. And Oscar, we've had the pleasure of working together specifically, so I'm looking forward to continuing the partnership, and you've seen some of this work, so I appreciate just you being willing to participate as well. Kirsten, thank you so much for the insight. John, thank you also for the insight, and we look forward to working with you moving forward as well.
Just a really quick thanks to the governor's office and Abby for leading this search a different way and bringing you in to find our next OHA director. This is the first time since I've been a board member that we've done this search this way. So I really just want to commend the governor for doing things a little bit differently this time.
Awesome. Thank you, Oscar. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye, everyone.